Hi, grade 12s. Welcome back. Today we will continue with some more transactional writing texts, and our focus today will be on the techniques and skills that you need to use in order to write a magazine article. So what is the purpose of a magazine article? A magazine article is written to inform readers, to persuade them, as well as to entertain them. So the style and the tone of an article is determined by the purpose, the audience, and the issue which is being addressed in the magazine article itself. An article written, for example, for a school magazine will differ vastly from an article written for a financial magazine because you're dealing with a different readership and audience, and so you will use a different register and a different style, and your content will obviously be much different because most teenagers wouldn't want to know about the financial markets and the vicissitudes thereof, as it does not relate to themselves or the issues that matter most to them. So once again, your title must hook the reader. Here is an example of different titles that have been used in the past. And let's look at some of the techniques that have been used. You can't stop us. And this is the title for an article about mothers fighting violence in communities. Note the emphatic statement, quite emotive with the use of exclamation marks. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And this was an article written about a family who own an apple farm. And we know that that is an idiomatic expression that we use to show that if you belong to a particular family, then you exhibit a lot of the characteristics and qualities of certain family members. Then, Twitter goes public, 21 things you should know. Here, the personal pronouns, you, engages the reader, so it appeals to the reader, almost suggesting that the article has been written especially or exclusively for you, the audience. Another one, why all guys cheat, fresh insight. Notice that's quite a controversial statement to make, so it is going to whet your appetite and you're going to be curious, so you would want to know, why guys cheat, because it seems to be a universal problem. Then, one of the obvious techniques that writers use is the posing of questions. Are you too clever for success? Once again, all of these techniques are used to engage the reader, to make them think about themselves in relation to the issue that is being discussed, so that it engages you to read further, because perhaps you will find answers that you've been looking for. This article again has the headline, Father goes for kidney treatment, leaves hospital as a woman. And, that's absurd, absolutely ridiculous statement, fills the reader with intrigue. So they would want to know, how is this absolutely possible? You can decide how you are going to hook your reader, but by all means, it must be done. So you can use any of the techniques mentioned here. Let's reflect. You have to have a catchy heading so that it can hook the reader, but your heading must also be relevant to the content. Then you also need to include the byline, and that is the name and surname of the writer. Then you commence with your introduction. Remember, this can be a statement about the issue. If you are the writer may share his opinion here, or you may use a little anecdote to demonstrate the issue. What is an anecdote? An anecdote is a personal little story, and in the subsequent slide, we will examine an example of how an anecdote has been used to introduce a particular topic. Just a reminder before you actually start writing your magazine article. A magazine article should not ideally be written from the first person perspective. As a writer, yes, you have an opinion, but what you also need to do is to gather information from various sources, which you will include in your article. So I'm going to discourage you and say that rather write from the third person perspective so that your article sounds more authentic and real. So let's start. Instead of stating the issue that you are going to deal with, what you can do is to relate a little story about somebody who, for example, suffers from a disease that you are going to be mentioning or writing about in your magazine article. And this little story is called an anecdote. It makes for interesting reading because then the reader will be able to identify with what the person is going through, and it will not seem as just merely a case study of nameless, faceless individuals, but the sufferer will have a name and an identity. Note in this introduction the use of direct speech and the fact that it is written from the third person perspective. The first time Tiffany Josephs cut herself, she was in 8th grade. There was blood and a sense of deep relief. For a while, I didn't want to stop because it was my only coping mechanism, says Tiffany. And so what the writer has done immediately, the writer has stated that there is a problem that the individual suffers from. The writer also uses direct speech, giving the sufferer or the person a voice, which so many other teenagers out there can relate to. Once you have your introduction and you've included your little anecdote, the article that we are reading deals with the prevalence of anxiety and depression. And so once you have a little anecdote demonstrating how severe the problem is for one particular individual, you move into your body, and what you do is you contextualize the situation. You demonstrate how this personal case study or story is an example of what happens globally. For Tiffany, cutting was a secret compulsive manifestation of the depression and anxiety that she and millions of teenagers in South Africa are struggling with. Self-harm is perhaps the most disturbing symptom of a broader psychological problem, a spectrum of anxiety that plagues 21st century teens. So what the statement in the body summarizes for us is the fact that although Tiffany has given detailed information or reflection on her situation, what she is going through is an example of what so many other teenagers in the 21st century is experiencing. So once you've started on your body, you now gather information and reflect what the experts have said on the matter. Remember, you need to have evidence on which you will base your opinions. You could use things like statistics, offering or giving a psychological perspective on a particular matter. You could even, for example, as you're moving towards your conclusion, think of possible solutions. So you might highlight the problem in your second paragraph, and in your third paragraph, you could unpack possible solutions to the problem. Think of it, a magazine is widely read often, and people do not just want to read about problems, but they also need access to solutions. So in this article, the writer continues, in 2015, about 3 million teens aged between 12 to 17 had at least one major depressive episode in the past year, according to the Department of Health and Human Services. Professor David Makwanda agrees every year a huge number of students drop out of university because depression renders them incapable of taking control of their lives, which seem to be spinning out of control. By citing your sources and allowing the reader to hear the voice of knowledge, it lends authenticity to your article, and it will make the reader feel as if they can trust whatever information has been written. We have come to our conclusion, but just a reminder, let us recap what aspects we need to include. So we have a title or a headline in which we hook our readers. We want to make them read further. We must make sure that a hook also includes something relating to the issue that is being dealt with. Then your introduction must link to the topic or the title. It is useful to include a little anecdote or personal story about somebody who is experiencing the problem that will be discussed in the rest of the article. Once again, a reminder, right from the third person perspective. Once you start on your body, you will now elaborate on the problem or the issue and how many people suffer from it globally. So you move from the personal to the universal. Here in your body, you will refer to various experts so that your reader will respect your opinions that you have and also trust that you have researched the issue, and it will lend credibility to whatever it is that you are stating in your article. You may cite the direct words of your experts by using direct speech conventions, or you might paraphrase what it is that they have to say. So what you're doing as a writer, you're basically stating what the experts have to say about the issue, especially if you are not an expert in the matter. Now we come to our conclusion. And how do we conclude the article? We wrap up the article with interesting facts, which could be a personal comment or even a direct quotation from either a sufferer or from an expert on the matter. And here you can introduce or include some advice for the readers. Psychologist Amina Davids concludes, these statistics are only the tip of the iceberg, since many people do not seek help for anxiety and depression. Teenagers need to know that there is hope. Once you admit there is a problem, half the battle is won, because your admission will free you to seek help. We come full circle then. We have dealt with Tiffany Josephs in the first paragraph, who did not have the courage to share her problem with her parents. And here the expert offers advice and informs readers that an admission of the problem is the first step in rehabilitation. Sometimes the question in the examination can be quite ambiguous because it asks you to highlight maybe the positive and negative aspects of a particular topic. If that is indeed the case, make sure that you write from the third person perspective and that the individuals and experts that you cite in your article will then reflect the positive and negative opinions that the examiner requires. Be careful. Do not merely give your opinion on the issue without some sort of justification or citations from relevant authorities or experts. Often students get very low marks if they do not know how to write the magazine article. But I'm sure if you follow these guidelines, It is something that you should consider answering or attempting in the examination. Good luck.